This video shows how to perform a fumigation under a gas-proof sheet to meet the Australian Quarantine and Inspection Service requirements for fumigation with methyl bromide for quarantine purposes. The full details are described in the AQIS methyl bromide fumigation standard, which can be found on the AQIS website. Methyl bromide is widely used as a fumigant for quarantine purposes because it is effective against a wide range of pests. To be effective, it must be applied as a hot gas into a gas-tight enclosure and held at or above specific levels for a set time. Monitoring of the fumigation is necessary to ensure the fumigation is effective. At the end of the fumigation, the enclosure must be vented to safe levels. Follow the procedures you see here and you will achieve a safe and effective fumigation. Good planning is essential to ensure a safe and effective fumigation. Do a site assessment to ensure the fumigation enclosure can be isolated from unprotected personnel, is well ventilated and protected from high winds. Public areas, such as roads and paths, must be at least 50 metres from the enclosure. If possible, position the containers so that the doors are facing into the wind to assist ventilation at the end of the fumigation. Check the fumigation surface to determine if it will provide a gas-tight seal. Check that the container identification number matches the documentation. Open the doors of the container completely and make sure they are secured. Unsecured doors can be slammed shut by a strong gust of wind and cause serious injuries. The contents of the container must be inspected to check that the goods and packaging are the same as specified on the documentation. Sufficient free air space around the commodity is essential to allow the gas to circulate the entire enclosure and fully penetrate the commodity being fumigated. Once the fumigator is satisfied that the fumigation can go ahead, he needs to prepare the site. Take care to remove any debris that may damage the fumigation sheet. All the equipment, except for the vaporizer and gas dispenser, should be outside the danger area. Once the vaporizer and gas dispenser are in position, the vaporizer should be started so the water can heat to boiling before the gas is dispensed. Small capacity burners, windy conditions or colder weather will increase the time taken to get the vaporizer to boiling. A thermometer will allow the fumigator to monitor the vaporizer temperature and adjust the heat accordingly. The corners and doors of the container should be padded to prevent sharp edges damaging the sheet. The easiest way to do the corners is to use your fist to push the padding into the hole on top of the corner to hold it in place and allow it to hang down over the sides. Hang the padding over the top of the door and push the door back against the container to hold it in place. All fumigations must be monitored to ensure that they have been effective. Tape the lines to a rigid pole that is long enough to reach the desired point in the container. Position one line at the top rear of the container. Another line should be positioned in the center of the container. The line at the front base of the container should be held in place using tape. The monitoring lines should be long enough to extend outside the danger area so readings can be taken without using personal protective equipment. Clearly label each line according to its location within the enclosure. Seal the monitoring lines with tape to prevent leakage of gas. The pipe used to supply gas to the enclosure should be placed at the front of the container and must be at least 2 metres from any monitoring lines. Secure the supply pipe to the side of the container using tape. Pointing the end of the pipe upwards into the container will assist with gas distribution. Tape all the lines together and hold down with a sand snake. Use a fan to distribute the gas within the enclosure. The fan should be positioned to achieve the best circulation of gas. If the container is filled right to the door, the fan can be placed on the edge of the container. The container is now ready for sheeting. The fumigators are using forklifts to pull the sheet over the container. Move the monitoring lines, supply pipe and leads so they won't be damaged by the forklift. Unroll the fumigation sheet. The sheet is held in place by using the lateral movement of the forks. Raise above the height of the container. Pull the sheet back over the container. At least half a metre of sheet must extend beyond the seal on all sides of the container. It is recommended that you do not have more than 2 metres of sheet at the doors. In windy conditions, use some sand snakes to hold the sheet down. You can use some wet sand around where the lines exit the enclosure to make it easier to get a gas-tight seal. The sheet around the corners of the container should be carefully folded so that a gas-tight seal can be achieved. Fold back the sheet at the corner. Reach inside the fold and pull the sheet back from the corner. Fold the sheet back on itself to the corner. Push the sheet on the inside of the fold tightly back into itself and smooth out and flatten the sheet and folds against the floor. This will give you a vertical edge of sheet down the length of the corner. When both sides of the corner have been folded, roll tightly together and use clamps to hold in place. Roll the corners in towards each other. The clamps must be strong enough to hold the corner and have no sharp edges that will damage the sheet. Sliding the sand snake down the side of the container will help pull the sheet in tight. At least 2 rows of sand snakes must be used around the entire enclosure to provide a gas-tight seal. Each row of snakes should be placed end to end without overlapping. The second row should be placed in the same way but overlapping the joins of the first row as shown here. It may be necessary to use more sand snakes around the corners. Tidy up the enclosure by folding excess sheet back in towards the container and hold down with sand snakes. To prevent any flapping of the sheet in windy locations, use a belly rope around the container. Excessive flapping of the sheet can cause increased gas loss from the enclosure, which may result in an ineffective fumigation. Due to the windy conditions, 3 ropes are used around this enclosure. Inspect the sheet carefully for holes or tears. Repair before releasing gas into the enclosure. Measure the external height, length and width of the enclosure. The forecast minimum temperature is 10.6 degrees, so the dose rate is increased by 24 to 72 grams per cubic metre. The methyl bromide contains 2% chloropicrin, so divide by 0.98. Record this information on your fumigation sheet. A danger area must be set up at least 3 metres around the enclosure to prevent unprotected personnel from being exposed to unsafe levels of methyl bromide. Warning signs must be used and be clearly visible. Set up a clearly defined physical barrier, such as a rope, to mark the perimeter of the danger area. No unprotected personnel should be allowed to enter the danger area at any time until the enclosure has been declared free of gas and the barrier removed. The signs should indicate that methyl bromide is being used and show the contact details of the fumigator. If using a container as part of the barrier, it cannot be moved until the fumigation is complete. Turn on the fan before releasing any gas into the enclosure. Personnel entering the danger area must wear personal protective equipment at all times. Loosen the straps of the mask to their full length. Check the faceplate is not damaged and the valve seats are clean. Fold the straps back over the faceplate and put the mask to your face. Cover the air inlet with your hand and breathe in to check for any leaks. Open a new canister and attach to the mask. Retest the mask with the canister attached. Hold for 15 seconds. The canisters become ineffective if used longer than recommended. Use a label on the canister to record when it has been used and for how long. Put on the mask and tighten the straps from the bottom to the top until it fits snugly to your face. If using gloves, roll your sleeves down over the gloves to reduce the risk of methyl bromide being trapped against your skin if there is a leak. The water in the vaporizer must be boiling. If the water temperature starts to fall below 65 degrees, slow the rate of gas release to compensate. Before releasing any gas, check that all connections from the gas cylinder, the dispenser and vaporizer are tight. Release a small amount of gas into the dispenser and check for leaks. If there are no leaks, measure out the dose. Open the valve from the dispenser to the vaporizer to release the gas into the enclosure. Check the vaporizer and supply pipe for leaks. Carefully check the enclosure for any leaks. Pay particular attention to the corners and where the monitor lines, supply pipe and fan lead exit the enclosure. If a leak is detected from under the sheet, try adjusting the sand snakes to create a better seal. Come back and recheck the leak after a minute or so to verify that it has been fixed. Once outside the danger area, remove your gas mask and record the time on the canister. Wait at least 30 minutes before turning the fan off and taking the initial concentration readings. Remove the seals from the end of the lines and insert the probe from the gas monitor into the line. The probe should fit tightly to prevent air being drawn into the line during sampling and giving a false reading. Once the reading has been taken and recorded, reseal the line. The fumigation exposure period does not start until the readings from each of the monitor lines are all at or above the standard and are within 15% of the lowest reading. This is referred to as equilibrium. If the readings are in equilibrium, record the time on the fumigation sheet. If the readings are not in equilibrium, restart the fans to further circulate the gas and retake the readings. This is the start time of the fumigation. At the end of the exposure period, take and record readings for each monitoring line. Each reading must be at or above the standard for the exposure period. The final readings do not have to be in equilibrium. Clearing the gas from the enclosure is potentially the most hazardous part of the fumigation, and personal protective equipment must be worn inside the danger area until the container has been declared safe. Do a risk assessment, particularly downwind, and notify all personnel in the area before releasing any gas. Remove any belly ropes below half the height of the container. The end away from the doors of the container should be done first. Remove the